All right, welcome. We're going to get started. If at any point you want some coffee, cookies, feel free to get up. This is pretty relaxed here. Did everyone grab a packet on your way in? White? Danny's got it. Everyone got a pen too? Do you want? There you go. Otherwise, there's more in the table. We are thrilled to have Michelle here, who took a lot longer to get here from Portage, but she is here safely, and we are grateful for that. So, might be spending the night
That's
here.
what I
Correct.
Said. I said I may just stay here till spring if that's not a problem, so I don't have to go back out. But I think we'll be good.
So, let me pray, and then we will get started. Gracious God, we give you thanks for this day, for the opportunity to hear from Michelle, and as we seek to be faithful followers of you, how we can learn from this information, put it into practice, and help our children, help our nieces and nephews, and all the students we come into contact with, and even learn what we can do as adults to be faithful followers of you by how we live, by what we watch, and by safely being good role models for other people that we come into contact with. Bless Michelle. Thank you for keeping her safe on the roads here, and help all of us to have safe travels home. All this we pray in your name. Amen.
Thank you. Well, thank you again so much, Caleb, for all your efforts in coordinating tonight, and most importantly, thank you to all of you for choosing to come out on a snowy, cold night, when otherwise I know you could be snuggled in at home. So I appreciate you all coming out for the night. And tonight we're going to talk about some of the dangers that our kids can face online, and there's a lot of them, right? That's why we are here. And more importantly, we're going to talk about some practical tools and strategies that we can use to help protect our kids and our grandkids and our students online, and to have them be able to use their technology in a God-honoring and responsible way. So before I begin, kind of the couple things that Caleb said. Thanks everyone for grabbing that note-taking guide, so you can feel free to add any notes throughout the night. You'll also see there's a lot of resources and some QR codes on that paper, so that way you have some follow-up information for you. And at any point in the night, if you want to go ahead and take any pictures of any slides that you see up there, sometimes there'll be some big QR codes in the presentation itself, so feel free to take pictures and notes of anything that you see. I'm going to be kind of asking some questions and discussions throughout the time together, and then again at the end, and then also at the end I'm going to stick around if anyone wants to come up and ask me any questions one-on-one as well. So before we get started here, does sometimes parenting ever feel like this? A little bit overwhelming, maybe a little denial, like totally have it under control, right? But meanwhile it's kind of just spinning out behind us. You throw in multiple kids and multiple ages, and you sprinkle in some technology and social media, and sometimes it just feels very overwhelming, and understandably so, especially when we think of us as parents, that most of us grew up in an analog world, and now we're raising digital kids. So it can definitely be overwhelming. Another good thing that we always try to remember is we say, yeah, it is hard being a parent these days. So many parents say that, right? We're parenting kids in an age that we didn't grow up with. It's hard being a parent, but I think sometimes it's easy for us to forget that it's even harder to be a kid right now during all of the technology issue and the social media and all of the times. And so we have to really remember to have empathy for what they're living through as well. So a little bit about my family. So yes, I am blessed to be able to be part of this research team and presentation team and work with some amazing digital safety experts, but maybe what qualifies me most is that I'm a parent just like all of you, raising my 4 kids through all of this. So my oldest is a senior in high school, my daughter is a sophomore, my 2 little guys are in 7th grade and 4th grade. So we span elementary, middle school, high school, almost beyond. So we're right along there with you with these parenting journeys and technology usage at all the different ages. So before we kind of start, especially since we have such a nice kind of small, cozy group here, I want to hear a little bit more about the families in the room here. I want to see what ages of kids or grandkids or nieces or nephews or students that you're here to protect are. I see we have a few students that are here, so Nice, you got to come out for the night. But if you wouldn't mind maybe just sharing some of your ages or maybe the age range of your kids that you have.
Sure, I have a 16-year-old son and then a 14-year-old daughter.
Awesome, thank you.
15, 14, 11, and then an 8-year-old daughter.
All right, thanks.
I have 15-year-old twins.
Twins, nice. It's very busy.
We have 8 grandchildren.
Wonderful.
From the age of 7 to 26.
Great, and it's so great that you are here too. We say this is for parents and grandparents and caring adults because anyone who God has entrusted our children to our care, this is important for all of us. So thank you for coming out and sharing tonight.
We have 6 grandkids from 5 to 22.
Oh, right. Nice age range, huh?
I got 5 grandkids that are in the area, and they range from age 4 to 15,
4 to
16.
Great. See, I love it. We're already spanning all of the ages here. Yeah.
We have one daughter, and she's a year and a half.
Oh, perfect. You're starting early. That's good. It's so much easier to start these healthy habits early instead of backtracking, right? So awesome.
8, 5, and 1.
8, 5, and 1. Perfect. Thank you.
10, 7, and 5.
Nice.
We have 3 and 5-year-old.
Okay.
Between me and my wife, we have a 12-year-old, 2 16-year-olds, 17-year-old, and a 19-year-old.
Wonderful. Busy house. Lots of activities.
I have a 5-year-old and 7-year-old grandsons.
Okay. Wonderful. I love all of this.
Granddaughter, just about 19 months, that already grabs.
Wonderful. And it looks like probably some more grandparents back here. So thank you so much for sharing that. And I love that we have the age ranges. And part of why I asked that too, so that way I can maybe tailor a little bit about what you're looking for the night. But then to also show that technology is kind of universal through all the ages, right? No matter if you have a 1-year-old or grandkids or you're in the middle of your teenage years. Hopefully you'll leave here tonight with some information that really impacts you with where you are in your parenting journey, and you can apply that to your kids. Because even if our kids are really tiny, we know they're either there or they will be there very soon, or they are in the middle of it. So this is my daughter. She is 16 now, but this is from kindergarten, career day. When she came home and she said, "Tomorrow is career day, Mom. We get to dress up like whoever we want." So I said, "Okay, let's go in the dress up bucket," because if any of you have a dress up bucket, it has everything in there, right? And she's pulling things out. We can't find anything. And I said, "You know what? Let's just look online and get some ideas of what we could dress up like, right?" So I very naively started typing in pictures of cowgirls. And you can imagine what came up on the screen in front of her little 5-year-old eyes. And after I minimized and got her way, and I kept thinking all night, I can't believe I made that mistake to do that. And I even told my husband that night, I said, "Can you believe what came on when I just typed in pictures of cowgirls?" And he said, "Yeah, how did you not think that that might come up there?" So obvious accidental mistake. But if it was that easy for me as a parent to click on that or search something as innocent as a costume and that came up, it's a good reminder to all of us how easy it is for our kids to be exposed accidentally to something online. So that brings us to why we're here and a little bit more about our organization with Protect Young Eyes. We exist because parents are afraid of what our kids might encounter online. We have research and education and our advocacy. And if you implement these, we hope that you're going to leave feeling more balanced, prepared, and protected. Why are we afraid? Easy. All of the things that our kids can see online. We look at the news, how it's tragedies trending, and it's constant news. When we were growing up, you didn't have all of this, and I think sometimes that leads to fear-based parenting as well. So it's easy to feel why we are overwhelmed in this time. So what we do is we come and we offer these live presentations. We talk about the research. We talk about the tools that we have. We do all of the digital research for you because our founder, Chris McKenna, was a youth minister, and PYE was born because so many great parents like you would come up to him and say, "We have 2 problems with our kids. One is we don't have the time to research everything we need to know online, and 2, we don't even know where to find it when they're asking us about what are these apps, what can we do online." And so that's why Chris took time out of his youth ministry to start this organization for parents and grandparents and caring adults to have the resources to help protect their kids online. And this is kind of one of those startling facts about, again, why we exist. This shows from the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children, 84 million graphic images of child sexual exploitation that was found online and the great increase that's going on. And so we know this is one of the problems that we're trying to prevent and help our kids stay away from. So we're also involved in the advocacy work and the legislative work. So for instance, we co-authored the device filtering bill in Utah. Chris has been on a panel of experts, for example, in Snapchat. Just this past summer, you might have even seen him on the Today Show. He was one of the panel of experts that regularly works with Snapchat to try to get them to increase their parental controls and make it a little safer for kids online. And then in 2019, he actually went to Washington, D.C., and this is his Senate Judiciary testimony that he had on Capitol Hill talking about some of the legislation that's out of date and what we hope to accomplish. So we're going to watch this here. It's about a 5-minute video, but it really sets up the reasons of what we see that our kids can have access to, and then what, as parents and caring adults, we can try to do for that.
Good morning, Chairman Graham, Senator Blumenthal, members of the committee. Thank you so much for allowing all of us this opportunity to speak today. I cannot think of a more noble cause for all of us to be spending our time on than the safety and protection of our children. I began Protect Young Eyes 5 years ago because the internet is complex, and even diligent parents are overwhelmed by the digital choices their children are facing. Through thousands of hours of research, hundreds of presentations at schools around the country, and dozens of articles examining digital trends, we have witnessed both the wonderful potential and the troubling and pervasive darkness that exists in the pockets of millions of young people today. I'm certain that in the course of today's discussion, we will hear difficult stories. I wish they were uncommon. In March 2019, CNN reported that Instagram was the leading social media platform for child grooming by sexual predators. Our own test accounts quickly discovered that young people, particularly young girls, can be hunted like prey. We started an Instagram account with 2 photos and tried to mimic the behavior of an average teen girl. We posted 2 selfies with 3 hashtags each, searched a few hashtags, and liked a few photos. Within a week, we had dozens of men sending us images of their genitals, telling us they were horny, and sending us hardcore pornography through direct messages. Even after we told all of them that we were only 12, they were relentless. A recent poll of 2,000 teens found that nearly 75% of them had received pornographic direct messages from strangers on Instagram, even if they had a private account. But you won't find any warnings in the App Store descriptions for Instagram that mention anything about sexual predators, direct message risks, sex trafficking, or hardcore pornography. Instagram's defaults are not set for child safety or data privacy, even though Instagram is rated 12+ by Apple and 13+ by Google. At Protect Young Eyes, we've also seen firsthand the predatory symbiotic relationship that exists between Instagram and Snapchat, both used by 75% of teens today. Many Instagram predators quickly shuttle kids over to Snapchat, where evidence disappears. For example, one relentless pedophile on Instagram who calls himself Daddy invites young girls to join him in Snapchat with Instagram posts like 12+-year-old slave girls, obedient whores only, or hit me up on Snap to be Daddy's naughty girl. Snapchat is where explicit content on Pornhub lives just seconds away from every user through backdoors within the app. The app knowingly allows a well-documented list of porn performers to make thousands of dollars daily through their premium Snap accounts. Snapchat is where harmless-looking face filters can encourage kids to share their location on Snap Map. It's the app that gave a Coors Beer ad to 13-year-olds, even though they tout age gating. It's the app where every kid, regardless of age, has access to the Discover News section, where they are taught how to engage in risky sexual behaviors such as hookup, group, anal, or torture sex, how to sell drugs, and how to hide internet activity from parents using incognito mode. But again, you won't find anything in Snapchat's App Store descriptions that warn parents about premium Snapchat accounts, predator risks of using Snap Maps, or the hyper-sexualized content in Discover News. Snapchat is rated 12+ by Apple and 13+ by Google. Tech companies will tell us that ratings are already in place. However, ratings are not uniform, lack transparency, and there's little accountability for inaccurate ratings. For example, Twitter was rated 4+ for a decade, even though hardcore porn and prostitution was everywhere. It is still breaking Apple and Google's no porn policy, but only claims infrequent or mild sexual content in the app description. Netflix is rated 4+ in Apple's App Store, but teen in Google Play. VPNs, which allow teens to circumvent parental controls, are rated 4+. Most social media platforms are rated 12+ by Apple, even though COPPA restricts use by children until age 13. Obviously, the current app ratings process is broken. Tech companies will tell us that protecting kids is a parent's responsibility. However, this position ignores the ubiquitous nature of the internet. Even if I do everything right to protect my own 14-year-old daughter, with almost 90% of teens owning a smart device, a simple ride on the bus or a visit to a friend's house can expose her to life-altering content. Never before in human history have young people had the ability to so radically change the trajectory of each other's lives so quickly. Tech companies will tell us that safeguards are already in place, but it currently takes over 30 steps to properly set up parental controls on an iPhone. We need to simplify this process to help more parents protect their children. For example, better age-based defaults would instantly and easily protect millions of kids. The addition of easy controls over school and bedtime could shut off distracting apps during these very critical times. Tech companies will tell us that regulating apps is too big of a job. It can't be done. However, video games are already successfully doing it, and the ESRB shows us a path that could be applied by reasonable individuals to apps. In fact, it was Mark Zuckerberg of Facebook who recently said, "I believe we need more effective role for governments and regulators." And we agree. Our hope is to create safer digital places for young people. 2 simple solutions could change everything. First, create a uniform, independent, and accountable rating system for apps. And second, enact better defaults based on the age provided during device and app setup. Let's fix this for the kids. Thank you, and I look forward to answering your questions.
So this is kind of where we are based on what Chris just talked about. Right now we live on the left-hand side, whereas parents and families, most of the responsibility falls on us to protect our kids, to set these parental controls and go through the tediousness of that, where it impacts us and our families the most, but we have the least amount of control over it. What we hope is that to have better laws and regulations and more accountability from big tech to be on the right side, where the people who actually have the power to make these laws and changes can do so to protect our kids. And now that definitely doesn't mean that we're asking government to tell us how to parent. We just want to have more laws that are here for our kids and are more age appropriate. So as you heard Chris say, our laws are out of date. So for instance, in 1999, COPPA, which is the Child's Online Privacy and Protection Act, made it a federal law that companies could not collect personal information from anyone under the age of 13. So that's what social media is, right? So that's saying really by law that nobody under the age of 13 should have a social media account. Does anybody here know anybody that's under the age of 13 that probably has social media? Probably, because it's very easy. All they have to do is just figure out which age to put in to get the birth date to make them look over 13. So it's an example of how the laws that we have aren't here to really protect our children right now. So that's what we're trying to help change with our advocacy and the legislative work, and then most importantly, just reaching out to parents and families like you with this education to start these conversations at home. So we're going to start with a scripture from Deuteronomy 6:6-9 that says, "And these words that I command you today shall be on your heart. You shall teach them diligently to your children, and shall talk of them when you sit in your house and when you walk by the way. When you lie down and when you rise, you shall bind them as a sign on your hand, and they shall be as frontlets between your eyes. You shall write them on the doorposts of your house and on your gates." So you guys are all taking the first steps by being here tonight to learn about this, to educate yourself, and to help your kids be protected, right? Because we know that there's so many layers of how to protect them, and the sprinkling of technology is just one part. We can't pray away everything for our kids. As much as we do pray for them and hope for their safety, we have to take these practical steps as well. So this is where it lands us on our position with cell phones and social media and ages for kids. So we think that kids should wait until high school before having a smartphone, and that kids' brains are just not ready for the complexities of social media until they're 15. Why? Because we know that no middle school child, or any age child really, is a better version of themselves, either emotionally, relationally, or spiritually, because of the presence of social media in their life. And so I'd love to ask, do any of you wish that we grew up with all of this technology and social media? Do you? No? Why not? That's so strange. I've never heard that answer before. Tell me, please, why? Would you mind if I put you on the spot and say, why are you glad that you don't have this, that you didn't grow up like that?
Because they're never getting a break from what other kids are saying or thinking.
I know you love it when Mom answers, right? I know. I have teenagers. I get it. They'd be saying, Mom, yes, thank you. We used to say, a lot of times if kids were having maybe trouble with friends or school, when they come home off that school bus, that was kind of their break time, right? That was their safe time when they were away from all of that. Now it is 24/7. There's no break from any of it. Anybody else want to share why you're happy that you didn't grow up with social media and phones when you were younger? You mean so when we're sitting right next to each other texting, hey, how you doing? Good, how are you, right? That you see a circle of teenagers often do, and sometimes you think, why don't you just talk to them, right? And my daughter says, Mom, that's so weird. It's embarrassing. I don't know how that's embarrassing or weird, but I guess that is. Yes, thank you for sharing. You're right. I've given this talk so many times and asked all the parents that, and I bet it probably wouldn't surprise you to say not one person has ever raised their hand and said, I wish I would have grown up with all of that technology. So it's a good time to reflect and say, why are we so anxious and quick to hand it to our kids then? If we're glad and we see the values of not having it and the dangers and risks and all of these complexities are thrown in with having phones and technology at an early age and social media, why is it sometimes hard for us to not give it to our kids and put it in their hands? And we're not saying that all of you have maybe followed this same timeline. Maybe your child did get a phone before high school. Maybe they are on social media before they're 15. Does that mean that everything's ruined and there's no going back? Absolutely not. No matter where we are on that parenting journey, yes, it's easier to start when your kids are younger and start those habits. But we can also take the precautions no matter where we are in that journey. So this leads us to the foundation of everything that we're going to talk about tonight. It's called our digital framework of trust. And after talking with so many parents who have kids who use technology well and God-honoring and in a responsible way, we found that parents do these things consistently and persistently. And we make it easy. We're looking in the middle column. They all start with C words, so it's easy to remember because we want to stay away from the columns on the left and on the right. We don't want to be that fear-based parenting. We also don't want to be the parent that's apathetic and not involved with their kids in technology. So instead, we want to be really intentional right there in the middle. And we're going to unpack each of these 5 C words that are co-play, copy and me, curiosity, conversation, and coaching. And we're going to talk about the relational side and the technology side with each of them. So we're going to jump right into the first one. It is copy me. And you may think, okay, I came here tonight to learn about how to protect my kids and what my kids are doing online. And it's intentional that the very first thing we're really going to dive into is not our kids, but our own technology usage. Because we want to think about, would we want our kids using their technology the same exact way that we use ours? How often we're on it, how distracted we may or may not be by it, when we're on it, what we're using it for, what we're clicking on, what we're sending. So this is the time to reflect why we use that. Why? Because we know that we're our kids' greatest role models for everything, right? And sometimes it's easier for us to forget that technology is a part of that too, that they're watching how we use technology and we're setting the whole tone for our family and our home when they're watching how often we're taking our phone out and getting distracted and using technology. Our late friend Colin Karchner said, showing our kids we love them is 2% effort and 98% putting down your phone. There's also been studies talking about some of the developmental delays from kids today, and they actually liken it to secondhand smoking with parents' technology usage. because the kids were distracted so oftentimes from our kids. There's studies even at the baby level where it shows the baby and the mom interacting face to face, and as soon as that interaction is disrupted by a screen, the baby shows physical distress. So all of the science and the research is there with the change in how we model our behavior for our technology. So it's up to us to remember and look at how do we want our kids to use technology, and how are we being that role model? How are we setting the tone for our family for that? And one of the big questions we get, and especially for young kids, is, okay, screen time. How much screen time should they have? So the American Academy of Pediatrics and the World Health Organization can all agree on 3 things: that almost no sedentary screen time, so no digital pacifiers for ages 0 to 2. Less is almost always best, and how adults use their technology is the greatest influencer on how our kids use their technology. They just actually had a new study come out that looked at screen time. And it said, this was from a year ago, it said the average screen time for an 8 to 12-year-old. Any guesses on how many hours a day it was? Any guesses from my screen users here? I'm going to put you on the spot because you look so happy to, I know. See, thank you for answering. A lot. Good answer. A lot. You are right. For 8 to 12-year-olds, it was 5.5 hours a day was average screen time. For the 13 to 18-year-olds, you know it's going to be more, right? It was 8.5 hours was average screen time. And it might sound mind-blowing, but I bet if you really think about it and think about how often you're on your phone, can you see where you probably have that 8 hours almost? Sometimes I know on Sundays my weekly screen time comes up and it says, you know, your percentage was up or down, and sometimes even I look at that number and think, gosh, that's a lot of time on your screen. So for average, that's what our kids are on with their screen time. There's also been new studies now that show that as this screen time has increased, it talked about even especially during the pandemic, and how it increased almost 20% of screen time for entertainment use for everyone. And the biggest correlation that the researchers see is as screen time goes up, the ability to focus and concentrate goes down. Why? Because the digital world so much quicker. Think about the kids' video games that they're on and how much is always coming at them, and the constant stimulus, and it's always something. Or when you're scrolling through your Facebook or your news feeds and then you're switching over to that. One study shows that even undergraduates, when they're online, they're switching tasks every 19 seconds. And so our kids' brains are actually learning to rewire themselves because of that fast-paced moving stimulus. And then they switch over to the analog world, the real world, and we don't move that quickly in real life, right? So they get bored. They lose that ability to have that deep concentration and attention, because online, everything moves so much quicker. That response, the reward, the likes, the comments, the pictures, the videos, everything coming in at such a rapid pace actually rewires their brains. Because we know, especially now during this developmental time for their brains, that their neuroplasticity, which means they're shapeable and moldable, and they actually rewire themselves to crave more of what we feed it. So if we're constantly feeding them all of this activity, that's what their brain learns to look for and recognize. And when it's not there, then they show that sign of not being able to focus and concentrate. Another good reminder that this is the time when their kids' brains are developing so much, right? We know that even their prefrontal cortex isn't developed until they're in their 20s, and that's the part of the brain that's responsible for impulse control and decision-making and good judgment. We know that's not even formed until they're in their 20s, but yet we hand them all this technology and this responsibility during their times when their brains are just neurologically not ready for it. So when we're giving this to them and then they make a mistake or a bad judgment online, we can't be that surprised, because we know going into it that their brains are not ready for the power of all of this technology. So when we're thinking of screen times, it's important to remember why we're thinking of that with their brains and all of the different research that's been done. With all the research, there's one study that came out that I personally thought was really helpful, because I've talked to a lot of parents. I do a lot of, especially groups with young moms and MOPS groups, and they're really interested in how much screen time for babies. How do I control it? Or sometimes we feel like technology takes over our family, right? Everything revolves around technology, and at night it's like, oh, you didn't do your homework, you were just on your screens all night, we didn't get that done. So maybe take a different approach and take a more positive, family-centered approach. So instead of just thinking about the technology at night, let's think about what's important to my family. So every night, I want to make sure we eat dinner together, that our kids have time to play outside, and that they have some time to read. And if we do all of those things and then there's time left over and they want to jump on their Nintendo Switch for a while, then maybe that's okay, because we got all those positive things that we wanted done with our family. And now technology can sprinkle into that, but it's not the main focus of our family. So having just that different frame of reference in mind, how you think about technology and how we can control it, instead of oftentimes it feels like it controls us very easily. So in addition to how we use technology, we want to talk about where and what we're using our technology for. Again, copy me. So these are how we're using our technology, just the same as our kids. And we coined this the toxic trio, because we know that anytime an internet-ready device is present with these three things, that no matter when we're 4, 14, or 40 for our kids or for us, we're more likely to click on or send something or look at something that we otherwise would not. Those risks just grow, and those places are bedroom, boredom, and darkness. So we say it's a good general rule for you to have with your families that no phones in the bedrooms. We say no phones in the bedrooms, in the bathrooms. The other tricky places to have phones are on school buses, which is a really hard thing to police. Oftentimes that's kind of out of our control and up to the school district. But think about it, one bus driver and 50 crazy kids in the bus with phones being unsupervised. I mean, what could go wrong, right? Sleepovers is another one where we really caution the use of cell phones, and then also grandparents' houses. So that's why I said it's wonderful that so many grandparents and caring adults are here, because oftentimes kids know that when they go to grandma's or grandpa's houses, they might not have the same parental controls and filters set at their homes. They may not have the same technology rules as what's in their home. So it's important for everyone to be on the same page. That way, no matter where your child goes, they're getting those same rules and those same protections. So this again is our founder, Chris McKenna, and after a couple of these C-letter words, he's going to give just a minute or two kind of recap. So we're going to listen to Chris.
Maybe you've seen me post recently about our Delay is the Way campaign, which is best summarized by our digital trust framework. Friends, we build bridges of digital trust between us and our kids, one brick at a time, slowly and intentionally. The first part of digital trust is copy me. Would you want them using their technology just like you, where you use it and how you use it? 3 words to help you think about copy me. Number 1, modeling. Friends, if a filter is good for their phone, then it's probably good for yours. If they can't have tech in their room, then you shouldn't have it in your room either. Number 2, announcing, telling them your intentions. I'm going to take this call, but then I'll be done and get right back with you. And then number 3, asking. This is what I call the post with permission rule. In other words, if you're going to take a picture and post it of your kids online, then ask their permission, get their consent. There you go. Copy me, friends. That's the first part of digital trust, because delay is the way is not a no tech strategy. It's a slow tech strategy.
And one thing that Chris said here that I always like to touch on, especially I know when we have younger kids in the families in the room too, is that post with permission part. And that's something that maybe out of tonight will be a good dialogue for you to have with your family and your kids, is about what they're posting. Oftentimes we tell them about what they should or shouldn't post, right? But oftentimes we forget to talk about what we're posting about them and our family. And a great example of this is that first day of school, when everyone likes to post these cute pictures of their kids, you know, with the Hobby Lobby little chalkboard that says, this is my name, this is my school bus number, this is where I go to school, this is my teacher's name, that's my Little League team name, this is the things that I like. And you think, wow, look at all the information I just put out there about my kids or grandkids. And it's probably safe to say that you probably wouldn't share all of that information personally with every single person on your friends list or your contact list that just saw that online. So it's a good reminder for us, for obvious privacy and security reasons, also to think about that before kids are age 2 years old, that 90% of them already have a digital footprint. Obviously, they had no control over what was posted about them. So oftentimes these little cute and funny, embarrassing stories that we think are cute to post about our kids, it's important for us to think about how our kids are going to react when they see that online or when they grow up and see that this is now the digital footprint. So it's a good reminder for us to not overpost. And then also, even if our kids are younger, post with permission. Even my 9-year-old, when I take a picture, I'll show it to him and say, can I put it on Facebook for Grandma and Grandpa to see? You know, if he says, no, Mom, don't put it on. Okay, then I don't. Because in our house, at least, too, especially with my older kids and their social media, they know that you don't take any pictures or videos or share any stories of brothers or sisters and post anything online. That's one of our rules. Well, that's also one of our rules, is when we don't post something about our kids without first asking their permission. So have these family conversations of how you're all going to use technology well, because it's not just us telling the kids how to use technology, we're going to show and use that together. So Ephesians 6:4 says, "Fathers, do not exasperate your children, but instead bring them up in the training and the instruction of the Lord." So we're doing these role plays. We are being these role models for our kids. Now we jump into co-play. I think this is kind of the fun one. This is just using technology together. These are these shoulder-to-shoulder activities that open up these bridges of conversation and connection and communication with our kids. When we understand how our kids use the technology, it helps us better understand our kids. I like to say, if you want to know what's important to someone, you look at what they spend their time on and their money on. If you want to know more about kids, look where they're looking online, what games they're playing, what they're searching, what they're looking at. And you get to learn a little bit more about their personality as well. So the big thing is be involved with your kids with technology. This is not about them just going off to watch YouTube videos in a different room while you're doing something else, or them going off to play their video games. Get involved with technology with your kids. Show them that technology can be a positive thing. We know it's not going anywhere, right? We're not a no-tech company. Technology got me here tonight when I was on side roads and GPS. If it wasn't for that, we wouldn't know where to go. We can't even order a pizza in the pizza portal without technology. Like, we know we're not trying to say all technology is bad. It's not going to be a part of our lives. We just have to know how to manage it better and show our kids that. And a big one is video games. And we get asked that a lot with kids and video games and what ages and how long they should be on it. And the big thing is, you know your child best and you know their personalities best. So for instance, my oldest son, he has kind of more of that personality. Once he starts, he's a little more of that addictive, and it's harder for him to give things up. So we really had to watch when he started that he wasn't spending so much time on video games. One good indicator if your kid is starting to spend too much time on video games or technology is look at their reaction when you take it away. If you take away their technology and they throw a fit, then you have the conversation where, you know what, you're putting a little too much emphasis on this technology. Now we need to back it up a little bit. When they're looking at video games, because we often get asked, what are the dangerous video games? What are the more safe video games? And it's not so much about which ones they're on, but it's looking at the different features that they have. So the biggest feature to look for is the chat feature. So for instance, like Roblox has a chat feature. Anytime you give your son or daughter an app or a game that has a chat feature, you're giving a direct line of communication to anybody in the world to connect to your child. And obviously you can't control what they're going to send or say to your child. So anything with an app is inherently more dangerous. But the good news is oftentimes you can disable the chat. Like in Roblox, it's about 3 easy steps and you can turn the chat feature off. Now you've made that safer. So know your kid, know the technology that they're on by doing it together. And this again just shows, do your technology together, play video games together. My boys love to play Mario Kart on the Switch, and I'm terrible. And they'll always ask me to play, and I come in, is there 12 places in Mario or 9? Do you guys play Mario Kart? No? Good God. Well, whatever it is, I'm last. If it's 12 players, I'm always 12. And they're like, oh, Mom's terrible. You want us to keep playing? And do I enjoy losing to them, especially to them? No, but we do it because it's important to them, and it shows that we can enjoy and have fun with technology together when we're using it together in a responsible way.
From a very young age, I want our kids to know that every internet-connected device is co-owned. That means when they're little kids, we don't buy them their devices, we buy devices that we let them use. For your tween son or daughter, maybe you get them a hot pink Amazon Kindle. You name the Kindle Dad's and Lauren's Kindle so that she knows there's nothing to hide. Technology is a we activity and not just a me activity. When your son or daughter is ready for a smartphone, aren't I an amazingly kind, benevolent parent that I'm letting you use this device while you're here in the house? And even if you've decided to pay for it yourself, whenever we have something that powerful here in the house, we're going to figure out together how I can still be involved. Because whether you are 4, 14, or 40, one-on-one with the internet, we eventually all lose. And trust me, that conversation with your teen son or daughter is a whole lot easier if you plant the seed early. We do tech together.
And another one of those things with co-ownership. So if your son or daughter, if you're giving them a phone or an iPad, it's important to have those conversations. Yeah, this is not just your phone. This is mom and dad's phone that we are letting you use, and we are all using it together. So talk about the rules. For instance, in our house, and what we say is there shouldn't be password protections that we can't get into. So at any point in time, my kids know up front that if we want to look at their phone, we should be able to pick up their phone and type in the password and be able to see what they've done on their phones. The flip side should also be true. If my son or daughter wants to pick up my phone and see what's on there, I should have no problem sharing what's on our phone, right? And if it's something that I don't want my kids to see, it probably shouldn't be on my phone. Same rules that apply to kids, right? And again, if you start these early, I think you'll find that there's kind of more buy-in to this. So for instance, when my son got his phone, which he would probably tell you he was the last one, because he said, oh, I love it. My dad is a high school guidance counselor, and my mom teaches digital safety. We don't get any technology. We're the last to get all of that. It's probably a little bit true. But we say, okay, when we give you this phone, these are the rules, right? Every night, it's going to go on our charging station here in the family room. No phones being brought up to the bedrooms. At any point, we know your passcode. We can get in and check it. Are we spying? No. And that's a big thing that we always stress. We never, ever advocate spying, but we do recommend monitoring. What's the difference? The difference is your kids know that you're doing it and that you're doing it together, and tell them the reasons why. Because, hey, this is new to you, it's new to us, we want to coach you along, we don't expect you to be perfect with the things that you're sending and what you're looking at, and we're going to work with you on this. So if you set up these expectations from the beginning, it's a lot easier. I was surprised that when we told our son this, I was waiting for him to kind of have a backslash, and the thing that he said first was, I figured that, because most of my friends, I know that their parents check their phones too. So again, if we have like this community, if you're thinking these like-mindedness and started having these same rules, how much easier it is, right, when all the kids and their families are kind of using some of these same rules. So then now it might look like this is time to ask me questions. But it's not, because I've been talking a long time. So now I'm going to ask you guys some questions and get you involved a little bit. So since we're on CoPlay, we're talking about if your kids are using any apps, that you should also know what they are. You should know a bit about them, because how are we going to keep them safe online and put the controls in place and know what to look for if we don't know what they are? So right now we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 logos of apps on the screen. So I'm going to have you look through there and just show me with your fingers how many apps you recognize and maybe that you know a little bit about. The reason I say that, obviously you get a free one, right? We all need a freebie. The Be Real on the left side, that's Be Real. So everybody should at least have one finger up, because you know what that is. But if you know what it is and maybe know something about it, put your fingers up. Oh, I see 2 hands. So now, that's okay. I always look for 2 hands. I'm really impressed, but I'm still impressed by however many fingers. Good fingers. We see a few. I don't know if I see any family that has 2 hands up yet, so we're doing good, which is great, because that means we are all going to be learning on here together. So we are going to look at, it does work. I just wanted to try it, because it's so cool, right? The one I have just has a little boring green dot. That is like a whole big circle. Fun. So this guy here, what app is this? Anybody say? Yeah.
It's Among Us.
It is Among Us, yes. Do you want to tell us anything about Among Us? How it works? Good answer. I love it. Yes. Extra credit. And thank you for raising your hand and answering that. I appreciate that. Yes, Among Us was one of the top apps during the COVID times. It shot up to the #1 app store. And it's more of a kind of a video connection game where you can play it with your friends and you kind of see who in the group is the imposter. It's a fun game. It does have some chat features on it to be aware of, but that one is, well, I'm not going to tell you the age just yet, because I'm going to look at some of the ages for these. So thank you for Among Us. All right, the bottom left, that's the freebie. It's Be Real. So now we all know the name. Has anyone heard of it or know anything about it? So this is actually the #1 app over the summer. What it is it's a photo fun app. So if you have it on your phone, all of a sudden you'll get this little timer off it anytime during the day. Oh my goodness, it's time to be real. And you have 2 minutes where you take a picture of exactly what you're doing at that moment in time. It has a front camera and a back camera. and then they share, and then everybody comments and likes on what they're doing. So it's a Be Real photo app. Again, top one this summer. So if your child has it, you would probably know, because you'd probably hear, oh my goodness, it's time to be real. That's what that one is. I missed it, but it sounds like good family fun over here. All right, what about this one up here in the top middle? TikTok, yes. So does anybody have anything about TikTok that concerns them? Anything, just shout it out. I hear everything. Good. Kids on the bus, and what are they horrible with? Just being... Waste of a nap. Yes, nothing should get in the way of a good nap, should it? Good answer. Waste of time. What else? What else are we worried about TikTok? Pardon? China. Yes, that's what's in the news right now, right? With all of the privacy concerns with what you and your kids are putting online and the privacy that's being collected. If anybody remembers, probably a year or so ago when they had all the TikTok challenges. I know we were getting all of the letters from the superintendent about talk to your kids about this, because they were encouraging teenagers to be destructive with school property and with teachers and other students. It is such an addicting algorithm, more so than any other app or social media. This algorithm is so addictive. Everyone wants to be the next TikTok star. You just waste so much time, right? Watching one video and the next one pops up, and then you're like, gosh, where did that 30 minutes go, right? Privacy concerns, all of this with TikTok are things to be aware of and concerned about if your child or you are using TikTok. All right, let's jump to this. It's kind of a pig nose thing looking here. Anybody idea what that one is? This one's usually the trickiest one on there. Caleb, any ideas? Nope, so that one is Discord. It's a kind of a social media gaming app where gamers can play games together and be connected kind of live when they're playing their games. Very popular app. Now, what about this one? Instagram, yes. Any things that worries you about Instagram? Same as TikTok. Private chats, the content that's on there, what's uploaded. Yeah, there's actually over 1,100 photos viewed per second on Instagram. And Instagram is actually the prime breeding ground for predatory activity, because that's where predators will reach out to kids, develop this kind of connection with kids, and oftentimes they'll say, all right, now we have this connection, let's move it over to Snapchat, where what happens on Snapchat? It disappears. Then everything they talk about goes to Snapchat, where it disappears. So let's look at Snapchat. Any concerns about anything that your kid might be doing or seeing or viewing on Snapchat? Is on Snapchat. Well, the good thing is you're doing it together, right? At least you're on it together. Yes, anything that specifically worries anybody about Snapchat or you see as maybe potentially dangerous? No history, can't monitor. The maps and location. Absolutely. For a Snap Map, if you're not on ghost mode, it will show your location to everyone else who sees it. So at any given point in time, everyone can see where your child is. So you have to tell your child to make sure to set their Snap Map in ghost mode, so that way their location is not visible. And not many kids do. You'd be surprised when my kids obviously have it in ghost mode, but once they were waiting for someone to come from the group, and they're like, well, where's so-and-so? And everyone gets out their phone. Oh, she's right here. And I thought, man, first of all, why would you want everyone to know where you are at every given minute? And the safety and the privacy, of course. So be sure if your child is on Snap Map, talk to them about putting that in ghost mode so that way their location is not visible. The disappearing is worrisome for two reasons, right? One is it's hard to monitor something when you can't see it. So for instance, when we send a message back and forth, you open it up, then it disappears. So if you're a parent going back to check, it's not like being able to look back through a text chat in a string to see what was said. It's gone and it disappears. So you can't monitor it. And the second thing is, if you're going to send something that you know is going to disappear, are you maybe a little more likely to send something that you otherwise wouldn't? Just that shroud of kind of that secrecy entices people to send something that they otherwise maybe wouldn't, because they know that it's going to disappear. So a lot of things. There's the Discover News section that is filled with explicit content. A lot of things about Snapchat to really be concerned about if your kids are on it. Porn is everywhere in the Discover News. It's easily accessible. You have the disappearingness. You have the snap streak that's so addictive for kids. So for instance, if you send me a message and I send it back, we had a snap, right? And it tracks that snap streak. I kind of liken it to like throwing a ball with a kid, you know, and you count every time, and and as soon as you drop, you have to start over. So it's like anxious, oh gosh, don't break the streak. That's what a snap streak is. And when we go into school, sometimes we find kids who have snap streaks in the thousands. So that means no matter what is going on every day in their life, they consciously make that effort to get into Snapchat and keep that snap streak going. We've also talked to a lot of middle schoolers, and we'll say, hey, has any of you ever had your phone or device taken away as punishment? A lot of hands, right? Because it's the easiest thing to take away, what they covet most. And then we asked, when you ever had that taken away, did you ever give your password out to somebody else, to a friend, so they could log into your Snapchat account and keep your snap streaks going? So many hands that went up. It was eye-opening and scary for me, even as a parent. So again, having a good conversation with your kids. And my kid said, yeah, Mom, kids do that all the time. They don't want their snap streaks broken. And they don't even realize that they're giving that power to someone else, where that way they're responsible for what that person's posting on their account. But if we're not telling our kids this, how do they know what can happen and some of the consequences that happened before this, right? So I probably didn't mention, but in Portage, my husband is a guidance counselor down at the high school in the area. You know, and he says not a day goes by where he doesn't have somebody in his office because of something that happened with technology and a way that they used or misused their phones. And one day there was a law enforcement in there taking a child away for something that they put online. And this child genuinely couldn't believe that he could be in trouble for something he kept saying, it was on my private account. I can't be in trouble for that. It was my private account of what I posted. And so sometimes kids just don't have the understanding of the consequences of what they put on their apps. Okay, let's see. I think we are down to one more. What's the red one? YouTube, yes. Would you be surprised if I told you that there's over 96,000 videos viewed every minute on YouTube? Well, you should be surprised, because that's a lie. It's actually every second. 96,000 videos every second on YouTube. I see two things with this. I think, one, how is anybody in the world getting anything done when we're watching 96,000 videos every second? And two is that there is not enough manpower in the world to monitor the content that gets uploaded and viewed on YouTube. We know that everything is on YouTube. We also know that most kids and people have access to it and use it very regularly. It's the number 2 search engine after Google. So at our age, if we want to know something, we Google it, right? If you guys want to know something, help me out. Do you Google it, or what do you do? Google it or YouTube it, right? YouTube, and number 1 and number 2 search engine, they own each other, so it's mammoth. Here's a fun fact. Anybody have any idea what age rating YouTube has? Would you be surprised? 4, good. I heard 3 and 4. Great guesses. If I would have been here a month ago, right before Christmas, I would have told you that it is rated 17 plus. And that usually is very surprising. Why? Because we give YouTube out like candy, right? Every little kid is watching videos on YouTube, but it is a 17 plus app. Now, I said before Christmas because the day or two after Christmas, YouTube changed to 12 plus. It was actually one of our followers that alerted us. Hey, all of a sudden YouTube's on 12 plus. There was no big announcement, no big fanfare. It went from 17 plus to 12 plus. Anybody have any ideas what changed on it? Do you think it was the content? No. Do you think it was parental controls? No. Do you think it was the marketing, the way they market YouTube? Nope. We don't know. Nothing that we can find actually changed. Why it changed from 17 to 12 and got lower like that, we have no idea, because nothing changed on it. But what did change now because of it is if parents had something, their parental control set to not allow any 17 plus apps to get to their child, now all of a sudden they're getting to the child because it's rated only as a 12 plus app. So that's how it was discovered, because parents who had put these protections on their kid's phone now all of a sudden had YouTube because it's only rated 12 plus. So it's interesting that we're still trying to follow and see why it changed, but still it's a 12+ app. There is one app up here that is the youngest rating at 9+. Any guesses what it is? What? Among Us. Yep, Among Us is rated 9+. We know that YouTube was 17 and dropped to 12. There's one more that's 17+, and that's Discord. And all the rest, the Be Real, the Instagram, the Snapchat, and TikTok, they're all rated a 12+. And do you remember at the very beginning when Chris's testimony and what we talked about with COPA, what is the legal age to even have social media? 13. But yet all of these are rated as 12+. So another thing to keep in mind when your child and you are using social media. So thank you for your participation. That was kind of a little aptitude to start seeing what our knowledge was of these apps, because again, if your kids are using it, you should also be using it so you can know how to put the best protections on them. So that jumps us into curiosity. If all of our tech conversations that we have with our kids are negative and yelling and everything's terrible, what are the chances that our kids are going to come to us when something terrible happens online? And notice we say when, not if, because we know they're going to click on something or see something. I mean, if Cowgirl Alley is an example, if it happens to us, look how easy it happens to them. We know that they're going to make a poor judgment or a mistake. Something's going to happen online. But if all they know of with mom or dad talking about technology is, you're always on your phone, what are you looking at? You're going to see something terrible. This is a horrible thing. And then it happens. Are they going to be excited to come and tell you and hear, yep, told you so. That's what mom and dad said was all going to happen, right? So we have to make sure that we weigh out these conversations that we have and that our kids pick up on our connotation of how we feel about technology. We can't always be negative about it because they're not going to come and tell us when something happens. And when we're thinking about this, we talk about why do kids look at what they look at online? Why do they look at pornography? Oftentimes it's not their fault. Why do we say that? Again, remember that neurology of the developing brain and not that prefrontal cortex with the judgment, and think about how powerful all of these algorithms and the technology is. Think about sometimes maybe if you're looking online or you maybe purchase something online, and then the next time you go on the computer and all of a sudden on the side you go, wow, look at that, an app just popped up for something that I just bought. Isn't that so magical? It's just amazing, isn't it? It's not magic, it's just the algorithm, right? It's so smart that it tracks where you view, where you click, and it almost kind of leads you down these paths to get to these sites. So we know that put up with a child against that technology, they have no chance against that. And is this a whole lot different from us or our kids? No, we have that same curiosity. It's just we didn't have these apps and this technology growing up. So again, having that empathy and remembering we would probably have done the exact same thing if we had the technology that's accessible that they are right now. So we talk about the 7-day rule. What is that? That means if your kids maybe have an app or a game that they want, and they say, Mom or Dad, can I have this app or I want to play this game? Before you decide if it's okay for your child or your grandchild, download it and use it for 7 days just like they would. Why 7 days? Because oftentimes what you see and play and the levels of the game and the ads on day 1, 2, and 3 may be different than 4, 5, 6, and 7. Specifically the ads, and that's what we hear most times. Even if they're on something that's appropriate, it's the ads that pop up that are not appropriate. And that's also because the ads do not need to follow the same rating as an app. So for instance, if you're on Among Us, you think it's only a 9+ app. So all the ads that pop up should be appropriate for 9. It's not. The ads do not have to follow that. So you can have a much more older, explicit ad pop up on an app that's rated for younger kids. So one of the tips we always suggest is typically when you get some type of app, you can either get the free version or you can pay a few dollars to get the ad-free version. And we recommend paying those free dollars, a few dollars, so you get the ad-free version so you don't have the inappropriate ads that pop up. So play the game or app for 7 days, then at the end, then you can decide if it is appropriate for your child. And then have these conversations. Talk to all of your kids and grandkids and nieces and nephews about all the awkward things that nobody wanted to talk to you about and have these big awkward talks when we were a kid. Why? Because if we're not giving them these answers, how easy is it now for them to find the answers? For us, it was a little harder, right? We always say when we were growing up, it was almost, we really had to kind of work at getting into trouble or finding something bad. Now they're always one click away from it. So we want to be sure that our kids are coming to us, kind of use us as that default search engine, because we know that if they're not getting the answers for us, or if they don't feel like we're open enough to talk about the technology with them, where they're not even coming up to ask us these questions, they're one click away from looking the questions up on their own on Google and YouTube and Snapchat and TikTok and finding those answers. And I think we can probably all agree that oftentimes they're not the answers that we would want our children to see, and they're definitely not given in that same loving, faith-based context and understanding that we would deliver them to our child. So what is the right age to start having these conversations with your kids about pornography and things they see online? So I'm going to ask you, since you all have a paper and pen and your note card, if you can just write down, you don't even have to share it, I won't even peek as I walk by, but just write down whatever number you think is the age that you should start having these conversations with your kids. Everybody have a magic number? I like how you're talking it over and sharing. All right, if you have it, cross it out. Not saying it was bad, but we can do better, right? And subtract 2. And that's probably the age that your child is closer to having these conversations. Because we know 2 things. Our kids are ready to have these conversations before we are. And if we wait until we're ready, it's probably already too late. So we need to have these conversations younger and earlier than we ever did before in what we did. They just had a new study from Common Sense Media that came out about pornography, and it said the average age for exposure to first-time pornography is 12 years old. And it said more than 20% of the kids said they saw it before that they were 10 years old. So obviously it's being exposed at earlier and earlier ages. So if we think that we can wait until we're ready, our kids have probably already had a good chance of being exposed. Again, I always think about school buses. If you have a sweet kindergartner who's only 5 years old and you think, my child doesn't have a phone or they don't have a Snapchat account, I don't really have to worry right now about all this pornography and everything that they can see. Well, I can probably guarantee you if they're on the bus where phones are allowed, there's probably a good chance maybe some of these pictures or things have been shared and talked about on the bus, right? So a good reminder, no matter how young your child is and how much we try to put them in a bubble, they're still going to be exposed to some of these things. So have these conversations early and consistently. We have some resources on our website about these conversation starters and some blog posts about resources such as Good Pictures and Bad Pictures book that you can use with the different ages of kids to have these conversations about pornography. And when we talk to our kids about it, we have to give them these tangible steps what to do when they see it. And we say 2 things, put it down and tell someone. When we go into schools and we talk to kids directly, that's the biggest thing, that put it down and tell someone. We have hand gestures and all that, so by the time they leave, they know we put it down and tell someone. So give your kids those tangible steps of what to do when they see something online. And this is usually the point where the parents look and everyone's a little uncomfortable, and then we chuckle and we say, come on, are you going to go out and tell your family, hey, we went to Hopkins Church and we talked about porn. They said, make porn the norm. You know, Michelle was smiling and laughing and said they're eating ice cream, talking about pornography, and people will think that was a really strange presentation. So I say, don't take it out of context, because taken out of context, that could maybe just blow up what we just talked about, right? But what we want to say is, don't make it so awkward where it's not something that you talk about or have your kids asking you questions about, right? You should be able to have these conversations at home. Does it mean you even need to say the word pornography if your children's younger or you don't want to say the word? It doesn't. It can be as simple as, hey, do you ever see anything when you're on your iPad, you know, everybody just showing without their clothes on, or maybe where they should have a bathing suit, or something that just makes you feel a little funny or strange? Nope. Okay, great. If you do you know what to do? Yeah, we know, Mom. We put it down and we come tell you. Okay, yep, sounds good. Boom, you just had your pornography conversation. Was it a big, overwhelming talk? No. Did we have to say pornography? Was it huge and awkward? No. But it was just these quick check-ins with our kids so they know what to look for, and more importantly, they know what to do when they come across it. And here's just some signs of what to look for if your child or someone that you know is having any problems with pornography. We know it is such an issue, especially with young and older adults now, to look for these issues and get counseling if needed and if that will help. Then we also talk about, along with pornography, is online predators. Talking to our kids about someone that might try to reach out to them online. Now, when you and I were growing up, we probably called it stranger danger, right? The creepy hoodie guy. Go to the park and just stay away from the white unmarked van, the one who might have been just smiling and giving out candy and puppy dogs, and that one you stay away from. Okay, that's all I needed to know, right? Everybody else is safe. Well, we know that's not the case anymore. And so we have to tell our kids what to look for and tell them and remind them that oftentimes it's the people who are the nicest to them, the ones who are purposely reaching out and commenting on what they're doing because they're trying to build that connection. And the big thing that we have to teach our kids is it's okay not to answer them. Because we've talked with parents whose children have been approached online and groomed online, and one son told his dad, yes, someone was talking to me, but I didn't want to be rude and not answer him back. And sometimes I think we think about the way we've always told our kids, we have good kids and we tell them, make sure you're smiling and make sure you talk to your elders and make sure you are responsible and you talk back and you answer questions. But oftentimes we forget to tell our kids, it's okay not to talk to someone that you don't know online. So it's important to give them that permission. And if you think your children are too young for this, I'll say we did a survey when we went into a Michigan school here of 700 kids. And kids that were 3rd through 5th grade. Can I see hands if anybody had 3rd through 5th graders and kids or grandkids? So a few. It said over 20% of 3rd through 5th graders said yes, they have been contacted by someone they didn't know online. So you think that sounds really young, right? I mean, I have a 4th grader and I'm 9 years old, and I think a quarter of those have already been contacted. By the time it got older into middle school and 8th grade, it was over 50% of the kids said they've been contacted by someone they don't know. So a reminder to have these conversations now and have them early with your kids about what to do when somebody reaches out.
A really important phrase that you can give your kids is this: honey, if something feels weird, then it probably is. This is a really great phrase, whether in the digital life or in real life. Give kids permission to follow through. They know what you mean when you say to them, when you get that little funny feeling in your stomach, something just doesn't feel right? Say to them, honey, if it feels weird, then it probably is. That means when you're talking to somebody online or somebody sends you something or you ever see something, both in real life and in your digital life, honey, if it feels weird, then it probably is. Give your kids that permission. And then when they feel that, tell them exactly what to do. Put it down and tell someone. And give them a list of someone's, you, a brother, a sister, somebody, an adult who can help them so they know exactly what to do.
I think the most important part about this is we're having these conversations with our kids. We're telling them what they could see or what could happen online. Then we're giving them the tangible tools of what to do when it happens, right? Put it down and tell someone, okay, so all this happens and we keep telling our kids, and then maybe one day something happens and they put it down and they come up and say, Mom or Dad, this video just popped up and I saw this. Sometimes as a parent, I have this reaction. Just sometimes as a parent, you have that first, oh my goodness, freak out reaction. Well, don't. Don't have it this time. Because if we've asked our kids to do all of this leading up to this point, and then they did exactly what we asked them to do, and our first scared reaction was to freak out, do you think they're going to come to us when it happens again? No. So we have to remember to be mindful of our reaction. Even though it may be scary, overwhelming for us, we have to be mindful of our reaction to first tell them, all right, thanks for telling me, that's not your fault. Now let's go look and talk about what happened. But beyond any shadow of a doubt, our kids need to know that they can land softly with us, that they can come tell us when something happens online. I kind of think of that expression, you don't get a second chance to make a first impression. That's the way it is with our reactions to kids when something happens online and when they do the right thing and tell us about it, just like we've been asking them to do. So remember from Proverbs 15:1, it says, a gentle answer turns away wrath, but a harsh word stirs up anger. Remember our posture and what we say when our kids come to us. And that brings us to our final one, coaching. It's not just parental controls, but caring controls. Our kids will always find ways to beat us. If we invite them into this process, give them agency and responsibility with us, we're going to watch them shine. So does anybody here, this is kind of a loaded question because I know a little bit here, but anybody here think they are smarter than their kids when it comes to technology? I was expecting one hand. Yes, one time I got a hand once, and I was a little dumbfounded because I'm like, oh, you are really smart then, right? I wasn't expecting it. They're like, well, our kid's a baby. I said, oh, okay, that's it. So now I was just waiting for it, because you are probably the only parents in the room who, at this given point, are probably smarter than your children for technology. Yes, enjoy it now. It may not last very long, but I think we can all agree our kids are smarter than us with technology. So if we think that we can outsmart them with technology, first of all, that's just silly. We can't, nor should we, right? This is not an us against them. It's us with them together learning how to use this well. So just like with everything else with our kids, we want to coach them with technology. You think about our kids, our whole goal is someday they're going to grow up and move out and be on their own, right? We're not going to be with them every second of the day. So we hope that during that time when they're with us, that we model the behaviors and we teach them and we coach them along the way. So that way, when it's their turn to go out and do that on their own, they're going to have these skills and tools to be successful and responsible. And technology is that same exact way. Just like you wouldn't hand your 16-year-old the keys to the car for the very first time and say, good luck. No, you're going to go with them and do everything beforehand, right? Just like we shouldn't hand them a cell phone or an iPad and say, here you go, there's your iPad, go off and good luck. No, we're going to coach them, kind of like training wheels with technology. Get them involved with the rules that we have with technology and with our family.
Right, the head of an internet safety organization can't stand the phrase parental controls. Why? Because I think it sets us up for the wrong relationship with our kids. I mean, think about the 14-year-old version of you and your mom or dad come up to you and they say, guess what, honey? I've got this great idea for your teen years. It's called parental control. Friends, if we go into this thinking we're going to control our kids, we're going to do it wrong, and they'll smell it a mile away. The software is intended to not catch them do something wrong, but encourage them to do something good, to root for them, to cheer for them. We want them to succeed, and if you delay technology, not giving them that smartphone until their early high school years, which is what we want, that means for 10 years they've been hearing from you that you're involved, that there's co-ownership. Go watch our other reel about that. And so when you give them that smartphone and you put covenant eyes or you put bark on it, it's no big deal because it's just a part of their DNA. Why? Because it's carrying control, not parental control.
So with coaching, and we're talking about working with our children with technology, one thing that we recommend is doing a digital trust playbook. Basically just talking about the rules of their technology that you want to do as a family. What we talked about before with that toxic trio, with the location. We're going to talk about, okay, the rules for you and your devices and should be the same for mom and dad and all of our devices. Let's talk about location, where they're not allowed. No phones in bedrooms and bathrooms. No phones on sleepovers. At night, our phones are not going to be in our bedroom. It's going to be accessible in another safe place in the house. At any given point in time, mom or dad should be able to look at your phone and see what you have. Have these conversations. This is where you talk about posting. Say, even if you have older kids, maybe your older son or daughter has Instagram, and you say, okay, one of the rules is I'm going to also have an Instagram account and I'm going to follow you, so I'm going to be looking at what you post. But maybe the rule is I won't comment on anything that you're posting. So talk about these rules up front that you're going to have with your kids about the technology. And this is a great time to ask your kids, hey, you know what rules do you want for mom and dad? Because oftentimes, we've heard kids say, mom and dad tell me to always be off my phones, but mom and dad are always on their phones. They're on their technology a lot too, or I think, we should have some of these similar rules. So have these conversations with your kids, and you might learn some things about what they're thinking about our tech behavior too that we're supposed to be modeling. So talk about the behaviors and the expectations for your kids and yourself as a family for how you're going to use it. That way, if you're explaining it as well, it's explaining to your kid, hey, we're not just doing this to try to catch you doing something wrong, right? We want to just teach you how to do something right. Then it's not getting into that, well, why is that rule? Well, because I said, oh, that makes perfect sense. We always love to hear mom and dad say, because I said so. No, but if we talk about the reasoning behind it, they're more likely to get on board and understand and have it be a rule that they'll go with. So now we're going to kind of jump into some of these parental control recommendations that we have. And we're going to talk about the hardware and software. And I also wanted to tell you, so we're going to go through a lot of information, obviously, tonight, right? And you guys have all been really patient and a lot of things that's coming at you. And hopefully when you leave, you'll say, okay, I maybe came in tonight with some questions that now I have answered. And you may also walk away thinking, I didn't even think about this until we started talking about it, but now I have some more questions, or maybe down a week down the road, or something changes and now you have more questions. And it's really important that we know that you have the resources where to follow up and find this information after tonight. So we recommend going to our website, it's protectyoungeyes.com. It has everything that we talked about tonight, plus a whole lot more, and it has all of these that we're going to talk about with these parental controls. Because I know your family's tech situation and your family's setup may be two different things, and what you're looking at now with your kids may be different in a little while. So this will explain all the different hardware and software that's out there that can be used for your specific family and your specific tech needs. So we're going to start with the hardware, and we're going to first talk about a router. And some of you may be thinking, I don't know what a router is. Is a router a modem? Is it the same thing? Do I have one? Where did I get it? And that's the most common question that we have. And again, there's another blog post on our website that explains all of this in really great tech, but easy to understand detail. But kind of the quick shortened version is, yes, you probably have a modem and a router. You have a modem because that's hardwired in. If you have one internet device, you would have a modem. It was probably given to you by your internet provider. But then if you have more than one device, or if you have wireless internet in your house, you have a router. Because what it does is it routes that signal from the modem to all the devices in your home. So I kind of think of it as like the hub of internet in your home. It has to go through this router before it goes out to your desktop, to your iPad, to your phone, to your Kindle. Everything starts at that router level. So that's kind of our first line of defense for what is coming into your home and what's coming on all of your devices. And we know there was a study done in Europe that said 27% of the unfiltered internet is explicit. And so we mean unfiltered, we mean anything that doesn't have one of these routers that's filtering out some of these things. So if you think about your living room, and maybe you have a coffee table and it has 4 magazines. We'll put an analog analogy here. 3 of those magazines are good, and 1 is pornographic. That's 25%, right? Same odds. So how confident are you when your son or daughter or grandchild walks into that room that they're not going to pick up that 1 out of 4 magazines? Because those are the same odds that we're taking if you give your child access to the internet without any parental controls or routers or filters in place to block some of this content that's coming in. Think about Cowgirl or Ally, and if I would have had a router on our system, then those images of leather chaps and everything that just popped up right before her eyes would not have even had a chance to get in. So for the routers, the one that we recommend is called the Griffin router. It has all of these protections on place where it filters out the content before it gets in. It mirrors an app on your phone where you can control screen time, you can turn off the apps, you can turn off certain profiles, you can control the time from this. It has all of the ability that you need to protect your kids from that content, even getting through and on the websites and devices in your home. So again, you can check out more information on that of our Griffin router. It's probably the most important and misunderstood device in your home is the router and what you can set on that. The next thing that we talk about for the hardware level is Gab Wireless. And I think of this kind of almost as training wheels for a child having their first phone. So if your child wants a phone, and there's some practical reasons for it, maybe you need to get a hold of them after school or when they're going to grandma's and grandpa's houses, or you want to know where they are and be able to get in touch with them, but they don't need the app store in their pocket and access to everything the internet has. Gab Wireless, it's cool because it looks like a smartphone or a smartwatch. And it has GPS on that, so you can see where your child is, and it has the availability to talk and text, but that's it. There's no internet and there's no app store. So it's a great kind of training phone for your son or daughter to have with that coaching of teaching them how to use that well, so that way when they are old enough and ready for a smartphone, they'll already have gone through some of this. So again, keeping the internet out of their pocket, but still a way to communicate with them. Now we're going to look at the software. So now when you take, maybe you have the Griffin router and all that is on your phone, but now you're going to take your phone out of your house and off your Wi-Fi and your network, and you're going to go someplace else. Now you want another layer of protection. When we talk about layers of protection, I kind of think of like an onion and peeling back all the layers. There's one layer of location, which we've already talked about, places not to have it. We talked about now the layer of at the Wi-Fi and the router level. Now the next layer is the actual device level. And so these are things in software that you can actually put on your devices to keep them safer for you and your kids. And here's a few examples. One is Covenant Eyes. That's an accountability software for anyone, teen, older, who is struggling with pornography. It is accountability software where they have an accountability partner that gets a report of everything that you're looking at online. Very effective for any issues with pornography that your family may be having. Another one is Bark, which is a great program, especially for like older, if your kids are at older elementary and middle school and just starting maybe any phones or social media. Because what it does, it actually has an algorithm that watches what your kids are writing on their text messages, emails, and social media. And then it alerts you. It pairs on your phone. It alerts you if that algorithm pulls out anything that could potentially be dangerous. So it is set to find words like suicide, self-harm, depression, nudity, sexting, things like this that could be harmful. It pulls out these triggers and alerts you that, hey, now maybe go check and have this conversation because there might be something that they're talking about online. So what it does, it prevents you don't have to monitor everything they're sending. Because we shouldn't also, right? We can't monitor every single word that our kids are sending. We want to train them and teach them and say, hey, we trust you until there's a point where we need to intervene, right? So I think of Bark as like that second set of eyes to tell us when there's something that might be a problem. And then there's the parental controls that are native and already free and on your phone. There's the Kite there if you have Google or an Android that has some of these family controls on them. And if you have Apple products and iPhones, you already have screen time on your phones as well. Are they easy to set? Are they default perfectly to already protect your kids? No. Sometimes they're pretty cumbersome to set all of the controls that you need to set. And again, if you go online, it'll have all of this written out step by step, screenshots, scrolling videos of how to set these parental controls on every device, on Chromebooks, on any Apple TV or Fire Sticks or any of these different apps, so you can walk through them step by step on how to do this. One thing we always caution with the App Store is to not give your child access to the App Store. A lot of parents don't think about it, and it might seem basic, but there's a few great reasons for it. One is so they just don't accidentally buy something. Another is because oftentimes just the picture of the App Store is explicit and has explicit content. So even if they're not actually opening the app, they'll see it there from the description. And the biggest reason is a couple reasons. If you want to know what your kids are playing and using on their technology. So if they have the App Store, they could download something and be using it without you even knowing. If you've maybe told your child they can't have Snapchat, but then they can still download it without you knowing. An example of this is when my son got his phone, but he knew he wasn't supposed to have social media. But one night when we were checking through some text messages, we saw that someone wrote him, oh, you got to get Instagram. Can't have Instagram. Just download Instagram. Can't have Instagram. My parents say no Instagram. They said, it's no problem. Just download it in the morning and delete it at night when your parents are probably going to look at your phone. Maybe I was naive, but I was a little shocked. Like, really, kids do that? I can't believe they would even suggest that. Now I know that's really naive, right? But at that time, I thought, man, what a good conversation to have. And thankfully, my son responded with, nope, I can't do that. I say, okay, good job, good teaching moment. But if he had access to the App Store, he can, and that happens. And I've heard lots of stories where that, if kids weren't able to have that, but then they download it and then delete it before their parents can find it. Always very easy to check, because usually somebody raises their hand and said, how do I check that, right? How do I know if my kid has used it and downloaded it? Well, you know that when you go into the App Store and you search that app, if it says get, that means it's never been downloaded. If it has that cloud icon, that means it has been downloaded at some point. So that's an easy way to check. But again, if you turn off that App Store from your kids, they won't have the ability to even get that apps. So my older kids have that on their phones. Even my son, who's now 18, he's an adult. I guess we haven't really thought about taking it off, because kind of like Chris's video said, you don't even think about it, because that's just the way we've done it ever since he's had technology. But if they want an app or they need something for school, they ask us, and we get a little alert on our phone saying, Lucas wants this app, yes or no? And then we can research it on our own and talk about it, and then give them permission to get that app. But that way we know what they're using, if we've deemed that that's appropriate for them. And then we also know they're not downloading apps they shouldn't have, or downloading things like VPNs, the virtual private network, where that is, it's kind of like that secret tunnel where everything filters through the VPN instead of through the router. So it's a way for kids to circumvent the parental controls that you might have set up in place. So by preventing them from downloading something from the App Store, that prevents them from having this other way around your other parental controls. So again, that's right there in your phone if you know it's there, and we recommend to use that feature. So we hope that after all of this and all of this advice that we talk about and the resources, that you're going to feel more balanced and prepared and have your kids and your families feel more protected online by doing these 5 C words, being very intentional with our parenting and with our conversation. And again, you may leave here and say, okay, that was a lot of information. What do I do now? Where do I keep finding this information? And this is a great resource. I recommend even getting your phones out now and taking a picture of that and opening it up. It's on our website and it's here. You can also text the word PROTECT to 66866. But that subscribes you to our completely free newsletter. It goes out maybe twice a month. And it has all of the updates on the digital trends. So for instance, when YouTube all of a sudden switched from 17 plus to 12 plus, that's in our newsletter. Anything that's new, any parental control updates, any software updates that parents need to be aware of is in that digital newsletter. Because again, as parents, we often don't have the time and we don't even know where to look to get all of that separate information. So we'll do that research for you, and that way you can see when things are coming out and how to protect your kids. We also have the Protect app. You can download it for free. It has all of this information in bite-sized chunks. It has videos that are specifically aged for kindergarten through 8th grade that have teenagers and young adults that are doing these fun, kid-friendly videos about tech safety, and they're intended to watch with your kids and grandkids and then have discussions, and we have teachable lessons and discussion guides afterwards, again, to start these conversations with your kids. You can see us, we're featured in Childhood 2.0, the documentary. We wouldn't recommend having it with kids because it talks about pretty mature subject matter, but again, it gives us good overview of why we need to be involved with what our kids are watching online. And also, for all that time we spent saying all the terrible things with social media, we are pretty active on social media, so we use it for good. So you can follow us online, again, to find out. We're really active, especially on Instagram, where you'll see a lot of these stories. For instance, we just had one now on the new AI and the chat and all of this that's coming down, so you can see all of these new digital trends that are happening, where we're at if you want to get more information, and again, the follow-up resources, because we want to be sure that this is not just a one-and-done conversation. We're hoping that tonight is the start of these conversations. So you go home with your family and you have these conversations then that keep moving forward. So sometimes at the end, I think we talked about a lot. And you might go home and think there's so much, I don't even really know where to start, so I'm just not going to start anywhere, right? I don't even know where to begin. So I like to break it down to just a couple homework items for all of you to have. One is to go home and have some type of pornography conversation with your child. Again, it doesn't have to be that big, awkward, drowning conversation. It's better if these small, infrequent drips of information have some type of conversation with your child about what they're seeing online and make sure they know what to do when they see it. And then the second is to go home and look at the parental controls that you currently have or may not have in place in your home. Look at what you could have. Maybe start with that Griffin router as that first line of defense. Look at the other software options that we have. What's good for your family may be different than what's good for your family. What's different now, you're going to maybe change in a year or two as your kids grow and get into different apps and different social media. Sometimes it's a combination of different software. So look at the parental controls that you have and then look to see what you can make it better. And finally, look at how you want technology to play a role in your family. We talked about not letting technology feel like this big battle that we're always fighting against, but instead thinking of our kids and our family first and what's important, and then talking about how technology fits into that so we feel a little more empowered and in control of our technology instead of feeling overwhelmed by it. So those are the 3 pieces of homework that I'm going to give you to start. So that gives you a place to start. And from there, the conversations and the curiosity and the coaching is going to continue with your kids now that you know the directions that we're moving in. So thank you so much for all of your interactions and questions and participation through all of this. I'm probably going to turn it over to Caleb now if he'd like to say some closing comments. And then I'm going to stay here for as long as it is if anybody wants to come up and chat and ask me any questions one-on-one. So thank you again for coming out tonight. Appreciate it.
oceans deep.